Hello. And welcome back to Bible Study Recap. So this week we are talking about God's faithfulness and our faithfulness. And if you were with us on Monday night, we really started off with this question of what makes someone trustworthy. And it's a question I think we all wrestle with on some level. How we would answer that kind of varies, I think, based on like personal experience. So a lot of people said like basically the proof is in the pudding. Like, your integrity, who you say you are, is actually who you are. And so, I think as we think on what makes someone trustworthy, our human understanding, we definitely place on God. We give him man-like characteristics. We compare him to man because man is what we know. And so we give God this humanistic quality, and we look at him and wonder, are you actually trustworthy? And so, when we really take in the character of God and we are talking about the character of God and really digging into these things, as we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, we understand how God's character all affirms itself. All the pieces affirm the different parts and different aspects. And so I shared this quote from The Knowledge of the Holy, and if you've never read it, it's a short read, but so good. And we actually have it in the library, so you don't have to buy it. You can actually just like come borrow it. But he says that talking about how God's attributes affirm one another, he says, if God is self-existent, he must also be self-sufficient. And if he has power, he, being infinite, must have all power. If he possesses knowledge, his infinitude assures us that he possesses all knowledge. Similarly, his immutability presupposes his faithfulness. If he is unchanging, it follows then that he could not be unfaithful, since that would require him to change. And so all that God does agrees with all that God is. And when we understand his character and we're looking at this, where we tend to get weird or lack trust or things like that, we have to bring ourselves back to a right understanding of God's character, not a man's understanding of character and how those things work and flow together. Because I'm never going to be perfectly faithful. I'm never going to be perfectly gracious or perfectly holy. I'm never going to do those things perfectly because I am human and I am fallen. But God is not those things, and God does those things perfectly. And so I think as we were kind of setting up our understanding of faithfulness and what makes God trustworthy is his faithfulness. The fact that he cannot change and that he always remains faithful and true to who he is what makes him trustworthy.
Yeah, and I feel like when we're talking about when we're starting to doubt God's character, it may not look like you're actually in your mind consciously saying, I doubt that God is faithful.
Right.
Like you might not be having that actual thought, but what you're wrestling out communicates that you are struggling to navigate that very fact. So I'll give you a personal example to where in the moment, navigating certain emotions or thoughts, I immediately was just like, like the labor is so hard, or, I'm never going to get there. Or maybe I'm not actually supposed to be where I am right now. Like maybe I'm not actually supposed to be doing the work of the ministry. In that moment, I may not have had the conscious thought, I am lacking trust that God is faithful in getting me where he's wanting me to be spiritually. But in that moment, I very much, looking back, was doubting who he is. Because if I'm doubting where I'm placed, whether it be wherever, whether it be in the vet field, whether it be in ministry, whether it be in the home, wherever context you find yourself, if you're struggling wrestling that out, in turn it's you doubting who he is. Like in that moment, I was doubting that he actually called me.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I didn't have that conscious thought, but looking back, we can see how it all really does tie back to view of God in that moment. Because if I'm struggling to say, you know, where am I supposed to be in life? Or what, all those big questions people always ask. Mm-hmm. Going back to, well, something that helps me is like, what do I know for certain? Mm-hmm. What I do know for certain is I never used to have a thought about who God is. Mm-hmm. Didn't even cross my brain, to where now it's a part of who I am. Like, it's just always on my mind.
Right.
That is evidence of God's faithfulness. Mm-hmm. So that kind of helps you kind of call to mind and see where you truly are doubting God's character, but may not actually be having the specific thought, I am doubting God's character. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think it's asking the right questions. Sometimes we fail to ask the right questions, especially if we're like clouded or worried or dealing with something. We tend to not ask the right questions. Where in this moment, like, how am I doubting him?
Yeah.
How am I, like, how is my behavior reflecting what I believe about God's character?
It's also fighting this idea that your faith does not speak to these things.
Right.
Yes. We do not compartmentalize our faith. Like, our faith is in the fabric of everything, because God created all things.
Yes.
And so I think we fight that tendency too, like in navigating the struggle of looking at who God is and how that relates to our life in the everyday, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. So we looked at God's faithful dependability, and we looked at 2 Timothy 2:13, where he says, you know, even when we are faithless, God is faithful. And this idea that God isn't changing. I sat down this morning. I've had a really bad habit the last couple of weeks of just like snoozing the alarm, because I'm like, no, I'm warm.
Thank you.
And I'm happy, and the dog is present. I'm just like, okay. And it's a really bad thing. I have to get out of bed. And so this morning I was writing in my prayer journal, and I was like, Lord, this is a little pathetic, but here I am. That had been like several days since I've written in my prayer journal. Not that I haven't prayed, but it was never intentionally set apart time for prayer. Yeah. And so, you know, even when I choose to hit snooze, God is still faithful. He's working on me. We talked about it this morning. I was like, send help. Send help. We did. We talked about it this morning.
I love the verse that we landed on. And it was so, in one verse can be like, bring the weight. I mean, it's so heavy, because something I had wrote in my Bible while you were talking was, because you were making this connection to like, well, why? Like, again, y'all know me and asking the why, but you made that connection. Like, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. Why? Then it goes on, for he cannot deny himself. And you can apply that to us too, to where if we are faithless, why? Because we cannot deny ourselves. We are fallen individuals.
Yeah.
And so like, I really like that where we landed on, even though we are faithless and that is an actual reality, the truth of the matter is he is very faithful, and he can be depended on in the moments that we are faithless. Like, use that for a prayer. Right now I'm faithless. I need you to help me in that. And that's just a way to turn it into a prayer. But I really liked how you asked the why and also provided, like, the scriptures answer it for us.
Yeah. And, you know, when we look at his dependability, that he is faithful, you know, we rest in this knowledge of his faithfulness. The one thing that we often fail to do is rest. We fail to pause. We fail to rest because we're usually trying to fix or solve. We're usually trying to investigate. There was a reel the other day. Yeah, I'm back on Instagram.
I saw that.
But
you sent me something.
It's because I want to see what my child is doing, and Instagram's the way to do that. Anyway, I digress.
So
she said like, I'm a professional finder outer. Yeah, that's all of us. And so like we're busy trying to solve, we're busy trying to fix, we're busy trying to do the next thing and get to the next place, that we don't pause and rest. We don't rest in truth. We don't rest in switching gears a little bit, whether it's practicing gratitude we talked about yesterday, but or just resting in who he is, resting in our knowledge of who he is, his faithfulness. And so the one thing we know to be true about God is that a promise made is a promise kept.
Yes.
And, for a lot of people, what makes someone untrustworthy is that they break their promises. And God never, ever breaks his promises. Everything he says he will do, he has done, or for sure will deliver on.
Yeah, it speaks to his glory.
Like yes.
It would go against his own nature if he didn't. He can't.
I have in my notes, like, he is utterly incapable of being anything other than faithful.
Yeah.
He can't. And so, a lot of times, again, like, we put these humanistic parameters on God, but our understanding of this has to be broken. Like, we have to separate God from man in our understanding that God is not late. He's not going to miss an appointment. He is not going to be so busy that he forgets. He's not going to remove something from us out of spite. He's not going to stop loving us simply because we can be a lot to handle sometimes. Yeah. God is not man. God's faithfulness is not shaped by ours.
And that, honestly, I mean, we've talked about this before. It should make us fall on our knees. Like, it should make us fall on our knees and worship him. Like, I was at that place this morning where this verse came to my mind, that being faithless and then he remaining faithful. And, like, all it is like, all I have is praise. Like, thanks.
Yeah.
Like, I bring nothing to the table.
I have nothing at all.
And I am very sorry about that. Please make me more like you. But more like you and less like me. But it should, like, that should draw something out of you, like, and push you to worship and just to be in reverence of who he is in spite of us.
It should cause that awe of, I am in awe of God, and I literally have nothing to show for it. It is all him. It is all him.
Yeah.
And, I love that he is consistent in word and deed. And, for a lot of us, we're very inconsistent people. And schedules change, things change, and we are just inconsistent humans. But God is always consistent, and it comforts us that he is consistent and that he is faithful. I loved making this connection because I love connecting with the Old Testament. And I love particularly in Joshua about the memorial stones that God calls them to erect. And you've probably heard the hymn, and don't remember the name. But I'm trying to like think of how the whole thing goes. But
go ahead and sing it, please.
Absolutely not. If Jeremy was here and I said it, he would immediately start singing it. But it says, "Here I raise my Ebenezer," is what it's called, this memorial stone. And so there's this connection with the Old Testament where God, and even in the New Testament, God knows we're forgetful people. He knows that we are extraordinarily forgetful. He knows that we will forget his faithfulness. And throughout Scripture, we see how God has set reminders for us of his faithfulness.
Yeah.
And they are extraordinary. And because I think about this a lot, like in our lives, where raising memorial stones, we had this conversation like months ago. I don't know if you remember this.
No, I definitely remember. Because it was like very eye-opening in that regard.
Because, for us in our lives, things happen. We walk through difficult things, or even like joyful moments, like your children are a memorial stone to God's faithfulness and his kindness. So even in the good and the joys, but even the hard, we God calls us to raise these memorial stones as a reminder of his faithfulness. And so, as we're looking in the Old Testament, there was several that we kind of listed out. The Sabbath is this reminder of this remembrance of his creative work, and of obviously the memorial stones in Joshua. They're crossing over into the promised land, this promise that God had given to them after all of these years in the wilderness and the trials that they faced. They were finally crossing into the promised land, and he said, raise these stones up
to remind yourself.
And when your children say, why are they here, you will remind them of what I have done. And I love that so much.
That,
circumcision is a reminder of his covenant. Baptism, this symbolic reminder of his burial and his resurrection. And the Lord's Supper, his body was broken for us, his death. Even the seasons testify to God's faithfulness. All the pollen that is literally trying to take me out currently is a reminder of God's faithfulness, that after the darkness, after the winter, that dead things can come to life.
And not, again, this is where I have to be careful, because our tendency is, and I'm speaking from personal experience, is to focus heavily on why you put up the memorial stone in the sense of circumstance.
Yeah.
Rather, the memorial stone is not there to remember what happened.
Yes.
The circumstance, the earthly event.
Yes.
It's to remember how God got you through it. His faithfulness.
His faithfulness. And, the other thing about us is that we are also memorial stones to God. We are a testimony of God's faithfulness. And so it tied into our next point, man's faithful devotion. And we looked at Psalm 119, verse 30. And we talked about what makes man unfaithful. And man, just the basic answer is just
their nature.
Just their nature, their sin. But, the influence that we allow, our weakness, our fear, our lack of interest, all of these things can sway us to unfaithfulness. Sheerly not wanting to get out of bed in the morning can sway us to unfaithfulness. And I love this. Psalm 119 is such a good psalm.
Yes.
Okay. I have a study on that too. Anyway, it's so good because it is really and truly rich about God's word. But the psalmist is saying in verse 29, he makes this statement. Where is it?
Put false ways far from me, and graciously teach me your law.
So he's saying, put these false ways far from me, because he knows that his tendency is that he is going to walk in the way that is contrary to God. So he's like, put that away. I'm choosing to walk in faithfulness. I am choosing the way of faithfulness. And, we really kind of sat in this place of these things don't come naturally for us. We are not naturally faithful, naturally holy, naturally gracious, all of these things. This is not natural for you and I as fallen humans. We don't just wake up and we're like, I'm going to get holiness right today. No, that's not how we are.
My desire is to.
The desire is there.
But then I'm like Paul, and I'm like, I don't do the things I want to do, and I do the things I don't want to do.
Your want to is broken.
Wretched man that I am.
Right. And so when we really understand this, that this is a pursuit, that we are pursuing this. When we say obedient imitators, these are verbs, these are actions. Obedience, imitation, those are actions.
Yeah.
And so we are actively pursuing these things. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to have a good little talk with myself in the morning and then the rest of the day is going to be fine. No, it's probably every 5 minutes or 30 seconds that we're having to correct ourselves and pursue that which is righteous and that which is holy. And so we focused on two areas specifically where God calls us to faithfulness, and God calls us to faithfulness in the small things. We see it in Luke where he says to be faithful in the little things. Those who are faithful in the little things will also be faithful in the big things. And we really focused on this idea of like day to day, mundane life, the ins and outs, diaper changes, feeding children, repeating things again and again and again and again. And those are the things that feel hard. Those are the things that can feel very heavy. Yeah. And God calls us to be faithful in those things, because the small things are often where we struggle the most, because the trials, we have no other option but like looking up. We have no other option or where to turn for hope other than to God. And so being faithful in the trials is not always easy, but it's something we do much more willingly than in the small things.
Yeah, I agree.
And we are, slow to open the word. We are slow to find the joy and find the faithfulness in raising children or discipling others within the church. There's so many places where it's the small, faithful things that matter most.
Yeah.
And how we live out that faithfulness day to day when we're kind of trapped in monotony. It's the same schedule all day, all the time. And I shared the story about Addison, and I'll share it because she won't watch this, because she gets weirded out watching me on video. She doesn't like it. Anyway, so, looking back on her life, I'm like, there were times where I was like, we're never arriving. It's never happening. I was sure she would never read. I was positive that I was going to mess her up in some way because I was extremely young when I had her. And so I was growing up at the same time, basically.
Yeah.
And so all of my mistakes as a mother, I made with her. Because you make mistakes as a mother. It's going to happen. You're never going to do everything perfectly. You're never going to have it all figured out. You're going to make a wrong choice or two, or you could have they may not be the wrong choice, but you could have made a better one, whatever it might be. And so all of those, she was my trial run. And looking at her as an adult, she's a pretty decent trial run. And it's not because I can't take I struggle when people are like, oh, you did such a good job. And I'm like, I can take very minimal credit for this because I feel sure that there were plenty of things that I did wrong, but God was faithful to meet me in motherhood to get her there.
Yeah.
It was not me and all of my efforts. It was like a little bit of me, a lot of the Lord, and that's what got her there. And so it's the mundane things of like teaching the ABCs, the endless reminders to pick up your things, put your socks away, fold your clothes, teaching them responsibility, teaching them these things. It's constantly, I've said it many times in motherhood, like I feel like I always repeat myself. But this is where God calls us to be faithful.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think myself included, but many, I feel like Christians feel as though there's this like balance. What are those things? A seesaw. Is that like those seesaws when we were younger?
Yeah.
To where it's like, I have to be faithful in all things without considering God's faithfulness. Like, I'm trying to formulate words to explain what I mean. Like, it is all on me, like personal responsibility. It's all on me to always be obedient. And like, yes, the desire of your heart is to be obedient. And you do have responsibility as a Christian. That is reality. But if we rely on ourselves so much and then forget God's faithfulness and what he says will happen and he will do, that's where we get ourselves in trouble, I think, is when the seesaw falls so much on personal responsibility and we completely forget who God is in it, to where even over here, to where we only say, God's faithful, he'll get me there, without taking steps ourselves. Like, we have to have balance in understanding what it looks like to trust in God's faithfulness while also living out faithfulness. Again, like this idea of what we're talking about is how we are reflecting God's attributes. Like this is an attribute that we can reflect. So it's like, what does it look like to have that balance in life and everyday living, where it's like, I trust in the Lord and I trust that he will get me there, but I'm also going to take steps to participate in that work, because you participate in your sanctification. And so you can't just sit back and be like, the Lord is faithful and he'll get me there. Like, yes, very valid and very true. But what steps can you also take to participate in that work?
Yeah.
Something that she told me yesterday, and you used a different language, but I'll nuance it a little bit like for this topic. But at the end of the day, even if it's a hard day, list 10 things that you're grateful for that happened today. Well, you could also, similar, at the end of the day, if it was a hard day, even if it's not a hard day, recall to mind how God was faithful to you in that day. List 10 things in how he was faithful to you. It may be as simple as providing me a home that I live in, or providing me friends that I can talk to, things like that. So it's like recounting that faithfulness. That is a way that you can participate in your spiritual growth, I believe.
It is. And because, a lot of times it's where our mind is set. And when we're kind of trapped in the difficulty, and it is a bad day, or it's been a bad week, or a bad month, or however long, whatever it is, we tend to, I always think of, I thought of the book yesterday. We were talking about this, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, where it's like,
is that the title?
Yes. It's a children's book.
Okay. That makes
Jack
more
needs
sense.
to read that. Anyway. And we read it as kids, and it was like, he's had this bad day, and it's just so all encompassing, this bad day that he's had. And oftentimes we don't look at it very simply as it is just a bad day. We just had a tough day. Tomorrow is a new day. Praise be to God. But oftentimes when we're laying our head down at night, we're thinking, man, that was horrible.
Yeah, how was I, like, disobedience? Like, man, I messed up this way.
We tend to like beat ourselves up, or we tend to really dwell like
on our unfaithfulness.
Right.
Although if you were unfaithful and there is a need for repentance, like, do that.
Yes.
So we're not just saying, you know what I mean? Like, if there's a need to go to the Lord, do so.
Or we're spending our evening dwelling on what we could have done differently.
Yeah, like, yes.
Or fixed, or changed, or
can you catch who she's talking to?
And this is where discipleship is helpful, because sometimes we need someone else to help us get a little bit unstuck. And so, instead of analyzing, it was looking at what was good in the day.
Yes. How was God faithful?
How was he faithful? How did he show up? There was a practice that I encouraged, and I don't remember if it was part of a study that we did years ago, of for like November. It was this practice of gratitude. It was like 30 things a day for 30 days. No repeats.
Oh man. I even said last night, I was like, I don't know.
And
then I had more than 10.
10 was like and you're like, 10 is a lot. And I'm like, I bet if you really once you start
dwelling, it's like,
then you're like, well, God, there's way more than 10. And so it's this practice of gratitude, because we're literally reminding ourselves of God's faithfulness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Of his faithfulness to meet us where we are, to get us there, to see us through, that he is consistent, that he is trustworthy, and that he cannot be anything other than who he is. And so sometimes we just have to,
we like that.
Have my mom calls it a come to Jesus meeting with ourselves.
Yeah.
And like,
yes,
bring it around. And sometimes we can't bring it around. And that's why we have discipleship.
Yeah, exactly.
So on that note, next week we are talking about God's goodness. So I encourage you to join us on Monday night here at 7:00 in the choir room. If not, we will be recording once again.